Hey everybody, no incense today. The battery in the iPad's almost dead, the battery on the phone's almost dead, and I need to get this thing done, so gotta go fast. Yesterday, I did a video and I talked about all the big stuff that's happened since my son was born in November of 2000. So, we had 9/11 and the Gulf War, and I mentioned Iraq, but I did not mention Afghanistan. I think also another biggie for folks who live in the U.S. I did not remember to include Hurricane Katrina. That was where it comes to disasters, that was a biggie. And also Hurricane Sandy. When I was in New York, remember Superstorm Sandy? There were parts of New York that were they were without power for a long time, and this was at the start of winter. It was cold. You didn't want to be, it wasn't New Orleans. You did not want to be without shelter, and you didn't want to be stuck on like the 20th floor of some high-rise building when the elevators aren't working, particularly if you're a senior citizen. So yeah, natural disaster stuff, and man, all kinds of fires, goodness. But yeah, didn't remember to include everything. So that was all written, I won't say as an answer to, but subsequent to reading some feedback from Michael in New York City. And Michael followed up. He writes, "Glad my comment could be the springboard for such a spirited and entertaining commentary. As you correctly say, I was primarily referring to the changing subjective experience of time's passage as one ages, not the crazy concatenation of events which you so ably listed for the last 18 years. Clearly, the changing subjective experience of time's passage is scalar, so that for a 10-year-old, 1 year is 10% of her life, and for a 50-year-old, 1 year is just 2%. To counteract this seeming speeding up of time as one ages, the thing to do would be to move, change jobs, and travel frequently, which is, of course, exactly what you've done, unlike most folks, especially the stuck in the mud composing this comment. So, very possibly, if you, KMO, maintain the pace of change you've lived in the last 20 years for the next 20, then those 2 decades will really seem to last 20 years. And if you are at all inclined, I certainly encourage you to do just that. On a personal note, in the interest of full disclosure, I'm retired now. Stay well." I described Michael as a cab driver in New York City, which he was and is no longer. I got to tell you, I've moved a crazy amount in the last like 30 years. I've lived many, many places in multiple countries in a variety of situations, both rural, urban, sometimes suburban. Now I live in a village. It went by fast. It went by really fast. A weird thing about, for me anyway, I mean, different people have different things that they memorize well and, that they recall easily, but I mostly navigate. When I'm driving around, I navigate visually. I have visual landmarks and I have memorized, sequences of turns and whatnot. That's how I navigate. Some people visualize the map. They can see the map, they can see a grid or, whatever arrangement the roads form themselves into, and they remember the names of the various routes, be they numbers or, proper nouns or something. Not me. I've lived in so many different places, and in most of those places I had a car. So, I had routes memorized, and I had a picture of an area in my head, but it's not like a map in my head. And when I move away, I forget the names of the roads very quickly. So there's lots of places where I have this visual memory, but I can't really describe it to you. So it's really kind of useless knowledge. And I was realizing today that while I've lived in a million different places, I never move back to a place that I've been before. I will return to visit. I've done that many times, but I've never lived in one part of the country, moved to a different part of the country or a different country altogether, and then come back to the place I was originally, and live there again. I might want to do that sometime. It seems to me. I mean, the whole, memorizing roads thing is irrelevant. What I was setting up there was that, I can, when I move away from a place, like I lived in New York City for 5 years. I did have a car there, but I mostly took mass transit. I didn't drive that much. But driving around, in the various boroughs, I knew where the bridges were, and I knew the major thoroughfares and how to get where I needed to go. But there was also so much of it there. It's like Photoshop or something. I know a little piece of it, and the little piece I know is all over. But there's so much stuff there. I could easily get lost if I got off my familiar routes in New York City. You can't get too lost, though. I mean, it's a fairly confined space. If you just pick a direction, eventually you're going to hit some barrier. But where was I going with all that? But it seems like when I move away from a place, that knowledge of how to get around, since I don't memorize it in such a way that I can describe it to somebody else, it's like lost knowledge, but it's still sitting there. Because if I go back to that place, it gets reactivated very quickly. So it's still there. Anyway, I'm getting into a long sort of twisty, meandering exploration of how the mind remembers things, and this is not the video for that. The purpose of this is it good to stay where you are and really sink some roots and know the place where you are? Or is it good to move around? And since I've only done the move around thing, I can't really speak from my own personal experience to the benefits of having been in a place, for a decade or more. It's just not in my experience. More on that in future videos. Send me your questions. Talk to you later.